Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Mormonism Live. Hi, Bill Reel. Nice to see you.
How are you, RFM? How is it going?
I feel fine.
Great.
Next cue card. Okay. On tonight's show. No, we're really happy to be here. You know, we were at Sunstone a couple of weeks ago, back at the very end of July, beginning of August. This is 2025. And there was a person there. Some people know him, most people don't, but he was giving a sparsely attended lecture in the top floor. And it was about 50 years of Sunstone, because Sunstone's been around for 50 years. And this is a time of celebration. It's a jubilee, actually.
Did you feel so sorry that he only had like 11 people in the room that you thought, let's give him a little extra visibility? This is it Jack or John? I think
I can't remember. Go ahead, bring him on. Bring him on. His mom knows who he is.
Give me a second. His mom knows who he is. There we are. Mr. John Dehlin, how are you?
Who is this guy? John Dehlin, not Jack. What are you talking about, Bill?
Hello, gentlemen.
So
what a treat.
It's great to have you here.
It's my birthday.
Happy birthday.
It's literally my birthday.
I was gonna say, I feel like we're the Heckle and Jekyll, the talking magpies. But now you gave me my cue that I have to go into, because Colby Reddish said he would be very disappointed in me if I did not lead the entire audience in singing happy birthday to you. So on my cue, everyone. No, hang on a second. I'm in charge of this outfit. Okay, you'll just sit there and be sung to, my friend. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jack Dehlin. Happy birthday to you. And many more.
Yeah.
How old am I, Bill? Bill, RFM, how old am I?
I'm going to guess. Now, do I get to pinch you for an inch, or what? That's what our teacher used to do. Now.
Wait, take a look at the color of my hair and the amount of hair on the top of my head. How old am I?
Do you color your hair?
I do not. I've never colored my hair.
Oh, look at that. That hair is so brown.
I've never colored my hair.
All right. Yeah, me either.
He has his wife do it for him.
I haven't.
I'm going to say, John, you are 54.
Aha, I caught you.
No one has colored my hair. What?
54.
I'm 56 today.
56 years old.
Old as dirt. Old as dirt.
RFM, you asked, what was that about? When I was in kindergarten to third grade.
Inch for an inch. It sounds mildly suggestive. What were you doing?
On your birthday, the teacher would have you come over and bend over across her lap, and she would pinch your butt.
Hide the kids, folks. Hide the kids.
It was a pinch for an inch. And I don't know who else this happened to on their birthdays, but now looking back, because that memory came back tonight, that feels like maybe child sexual assault. I don't know. Teachers shouldn't be touching kids' asses, I don't think.
What do you think about that, Jack?
I agree, Fred.
Well, 50 years of Sunstone, Mr. Dehlin.
And you've been around for 25 of it.
No, actually more. Actually more.
Yeah.
Is this time for me to start?
Oh, I don't think so quite yet.
Okay.
Do you think so, Bill?
It's up to you, Mr. Radio Free Mormon.
Yes, because this is my show, and I'll exercise a little unrighteous dominion here and there. So, John Dehlin, you know, it's so great you came on the show, and I really appreciate that. And with little notice, really, because all of a sudden it occurred to me that this is a natural, and we need to talk about Sunstone. And I had planned on talking about Sunstone, right, on an RFM episode, but then I was feeling so badly from, Utah. I caught a bad case of Utah. So that put me down for like a week. And Bill made this wonderful thumbnail, Sunstone, like it's a postcard, one of those old time postcards. And then he put our faces in front of it. It was just going to be me originally. In fact, it was just me originally. But then I was too low to be able to perform. Sorry. So we didn't do that. And I went on to do something else, which I think was even better. But now we got back to Sunstone. And I thought, well, I've already talked about everything I was going to talk about on last week's Mormonism Live during the half hour when we had to tap dance because Lauren Matthias had that medical issue that she had to run to the hospital for and then come back. So I had to tap dance for half an hour. I used up all my Sunstone stuff in the half an hour, just keeping us afloat. You understand, John?
Yes.
And so if we're going to do it Sunstone now, then we need to have you come in, because not only are you a part of Sunstone, and frankly, we all know you're kind of a big deal, but also you gave a talk about this very issue. And the meeting was not sparsely attended. It was packed. I mean, come on, it's John Dehlin. He had the coolest room in the house. It was like the penthouse apartment. There was a swimming pool over here on the side, jacuzzi over there, lots of chairs set up. It was a swinging time. And the best part of it, I got to tell you, the funniest part to me, because I identified so much with it, was it an hour and a half that you had to talk, John? Okay, let's do less tonight.
Hour and a half.
A little less tonight. But when you were done, it's like you breathed a sigh of relief. You did a great job, but at the end, you breathed a sigh of relief. Said, "Thank goodness this is done."
Absolutely.
I had a feeling that you were working under some stress.
Yeah, it was stressful, but I was glad it was over.
And I also thought, if you worked so hard on that, which you did, why not give you another chance to share some of your great stuff?
Oh, well, fun. Well, I'm honored. I'm honored and excited.
Now you may begin.
Okay. Well, thanks for inviting me. Maybe let me give a couple disclaimers. First of all, how long do you want me to go? Because I want to very carefully observe the time constraints.
I think an hour's fine. And if he's really rock and rolling, we could extend it.
1 hour. Okay. So that puts me at 7:10 about. Okay. All right. So a couple of quick disclaimers. One is that I'm not a historian. I'm not even expert on Sunstone. And in some ways, I don't have any business talking about the history of Sunstone. But kindly, Lindsay Hansen Park asked me to speak at this last Sunstone, and she wanted me to talk about sort of the internet Mormonism sort of over the past 20 to 25 years and how it connects with Sunstone. So my talk that you saw, RFM, was a very personal talk. I spent about a third talking about my upbringing as a Mormon and the questions and doubts and concerns that I had leading up to my corrupt mission, but all the questions I had in Mormon seminary, and that took up a full third of the talk. The next third was sort of like the role Sunstone played in my life, from the time I was at BYU, basically, up until I started Mormon Stories podcast. That was kind of the middle third. And then the final third was kind of what's happened with the internet, since the Bloggernacle emerged in 2004, and then everything that's happened since, and how maybe modern Mormon internet influencers were inspired by and or built on the legacy that Sunstone and the Tanners and Dialogue and others built. So I'm not going to even try and give that whole talk today. I'm going to kind of focus on the middle part, which is just how Sunstone impacted me. But I'll also throw some timeline things just for fun, just to give a super loose, informal history of Sunstone. But in no way is this going to be comprehensive or even accurate. Is that okay?
Well, yeah. And I really appreciated all your insights and the ones you're going to share, because as a member of the church for the longest time, I didn't even see a Sunstone. I only heard rumors whispered in the hallways. It was a sort of a slur in the church to faithful Mormons, something we would never have anything to do with.
Absolutely. And let's make today conversational, and we'll just end whenever y'all want to end, and I'll be happy and relieved that it's over. All right, so I've got a little timeline. Let's do this as a Trivial Pursuit game, at least for part of it. Is that okay? Can we do some Trivial Pursuit here?
Yes.
All right, and I'm going to invite the audience. I'm going to invite the audience to try and beat RFM and Bill Reel. So audience members, get on your keypads, your keyboards, your thumbs, your phones. I'm going to ask some Trivial Pursuit questions and see if you can beat Bill Reel and RFM with an answer. Is that fun? We'll get some engagement.
So much fun, and we haven't heard these questions and answers before.
You have not reviewed any of these slides at all, so this is all fresh. All right, so I put the start of Sunstone I put the date of the start of Sunstone at 1945, oddly, which is going to sound bizarre, but that's the year a very important book is published. Does anyone listening or on the show know what important book was published in 1945? RFM.
Mein Kampf. No, I'm kidding. I was
Very
published
good.
before then. I think you're talking about No Man Knows My History by Von Brody.
Dan Vogel got you. He got Brody before your joke delayed, but yes,
But
we're
was he
getting
as
the answers
funny?
in.
Was he as funny as Mein Kampf? Huh?
No,
Were
he was
you,
not as
Dan? Were
funny.
you?
He was just more timely. Yeah, so No Man Knows My History is released in 1945. It kind of is the first time honest, accurate history and a credible, honest, open biography about Joseph Smith is released. That kind of shakes the world. And then the next question is, for everyone, what year did Gerald and Sandra Tanner sort of begin their work that culminated in the Utah Lighthouse Ministry? What year did Gerald and Tanner start? Bill Reel.
1962.
Close, not true. Anyone else? The date I have is 1959. Now, that may not be the official beginning, but 1959 is the date, the best date I could come up with for when Gerald and Sandra really, really began their stuff. And that was important because it's like downtown Salt Lake, sharing really tough facts, doing independent research, sharing news information through their newsletter. Obviously, we all know that Gerald and Sandra Tanner are legends, and I think they're an important pre-founding, kind of a proto-Sunstone, is what Gerald and Sandra Tanner were doing with their newsletter.
I got to tell you, when I first met Sandra Tanner, I was bowled over by what a nice person this minion of Satan was.
Exactly. She's the most grandmotherly, satanic figure in the history of humankind.
She's the grandmother of Satan. That's what it is. But that's what we're raised to believe, is that they're horrible. The Tanners, these are the worst of the worst. They used to be members, now they're not. These are sons of perdition. And the only person in Western Washington back in the late 70s who was worse than the Tanners was Ed Decker. And I know you've had him on your show, John.
I did. May he rest in peace. Bill?
Ed Decker was so awful that even the Tanners didn't really care for his credibility.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Minions of Satan. Yeah.
Okay, the next Proto-Sunstone date is the year that Dialogue, a Journal of Mormon Thought, first released. Does anyone know the year that Dialogue first came onto the scene? Dialogue, a Journal of Mormon Thought.
I would have a guess, but it would be just a guess. Do you know, Bill?
I know that Elder Oaks was on the founding committee.
That was going to be one of my questions.
I'm going to guess that we are 1961.
Dan Vogel got the right answer.
66?
Dan Vogel got it. 1966 is the right answer. Again, Dan Vogel got it.
I do not have the live chat on there, so I did not see that Dan Vogel had it. I said 1966.
Nice.
Thank you.
That was the year Dialogue came on, and that was the first scholarly journal of Mormon studies and Mormon thought. Y'all remember who the first editor of Dialogue magazine was?
Bill?
I don't know what Oaks' position was.
It was not Oaks. He's a much beloved BYU professor, English professor.
Eugene
England. Eugene England was the first editor of Dialogue Foundation in 1966. And this is building the Sunstone. And by the way, both Sandra Tanner and Eugene England were heavy participants of Sunstone in those early years. So they're worth mentioning if for no other reason than that. So
and I think that Gerald Tanner, at least at one point, co-authored an article that was published in Dialogue about the Book of Abraham.
That's right. I think that's right. So that's 1966. And then something really big and important happened in Mormon studies in 1972. Do y'all know what happened in 1972 that was kind of earth-shattering for Mormon history, Mormon studies? Anyone know?
Leonard Arrington?
Yes, that is the year Leonard Arrington was brought on by the church to become the first kind of credible scholarly church historian, obviously following on the heels not just of Howard Hunter, but before Howard Hunter, it was the infamous Bill Reel. You know who I'm talking about, who was church historian for like 40 or 50 years.
Joseph Fielding Smith. I think everybody in the audience knows that one, John. I'm not getting any of the hard ones.
But he was the president who appointed Leonard Arrington, wasn't he? If it was 72.
I don't know who. I want to say it was Harold B. Lee, but I'm not sure.
It was Harold B. Lee.
Yeah. But anyway, this is all important too, because we're seeing the ramping up of Mormon studies with the Tanners, with Brody, then the Tanners, then Dialogue, then Leonard Arrington. And my understanding, I've read the book Adventures of a Church Historian, and my understanding is Leonard Arrington was brought on literally the church's history department. The Camelot years of Mormon church history were founded directly out of concern for Fawn Brody's book and the Tanners, and even Dialogue. And basically there was this general feeling the historical narrative is getting away from us, and we need to be able to help control the narrative. So since there's Brody, since there's Dialogue, since there's the Tanners, let's start our own church history department and help control the narrative. So that was 72. All right.
How did that go, John? How did that whole letting historians do church history go? I'll just add here that if you go to the church history, I forget what they call the building there, but where these folks all reside, I don't think for a long time Arrington's plaque hung on the wall, and I'm not even sure they considered him after that officially like as church historian. There was something about his legacy being a church historian that was sort of skipped over.
No, there's a couple things. So he was called as church historian in General Conference in 1972. His 10 years as church historian, lasted until 1982. And even though he was called as church historian in 72, in General Conference, by sustaining vote, when he was released in 82, he was not released and thanked in General Conference. He was just quietly released. And yes, his mural used to sit at church headquarters as one of the several church historians over the years, and they literally removed his mural to erase that he even served for 10 years as a church historian, as according to the stories I've read. So
I would be remiss at this point if I did not brag and bear my testimony that the current church historian is my former missionary companion, Kyle McKay.
Nice.
And the rules of Mormonism could apply to him too if he showed too much church history.
Yeah, and that was really important what you said, I think, John, when you said the church wanted to get ahead of things. Well, they're behind things, but try and get their version and control the narrative. And that's the problem. That's the active word, the control. That's what they wanted. They got all these historians together, put GAs over them, and tried to control the historians and what it was that they were putting out. And that ended, predictably, in disaster.
It did. It did. But it's also a really good thing. We probably wouldn't necessarily have Michael Quinn if it weren't for Leonard Arrington, right? And so many other historians and so many other good works. And so it's in this time period of the 1970s when, and I'll just say 1974 ish, a man named Scott Kinney, who I believe was at Sunstone this past symposium, and someone named Keith Norman, they're credited as the founders of what was called the Sunstone Review, which was a magazine that was meant to sort of, review books, review literature, review scholarship. And Peggy Fletcher Stack, as I understand it, joined just a few months later, let's just say in that late 1974, early 1975 timeframe. And of course, Peggy Fletcher Stack is best known today as a multi-decade award-winning, religious news reporter for the Salt Lake Tribune. So Peggy got her start working for Sunstone Magazine way, way back in the day. And my understanding is Scott Kinney and Keith Norman didn't last very long. And so Peggy Fletcher Stack took over editing the magazine and eventually the symposium around 1978.
By the way, John, I just want to ask you a question. Let us know when you're ready to go to your slides. I don't know if are you thinking the slides are showing right now?
No, I'm not showing anything yet.
Okay. We've had people on who thought slides were showing and they're reading off of them. Okay, just want to make sure that wasn't happening.
No. I figured if I'll show, there's a couple things I'm going to show, but nothing's important right now.
Okay.
I'm just reading some of the timelines. Couple other interesting things. Orson Scott Card. Have you all heard of Orson Scott Card, Bill? You RFM?
Memory of Earth.
Yeah, song and book writer.
Yeah, I think Ender's Game is the most popular book he ever wrote.
That was actually a good book.
It was a good book. Did y'all know that Orson Scott Card was heavily involved in Sunstone in the late 70s and early 80s?
Not sure I did. Maybe.
He was. In fact, it was Orson Scott Card who recommended that Sunstone Review change its name to Sunstone Magazine and take on more of a magazine format than a review format. And that happened in 77. And again, Peggy took over with Alan Roberts in 78. And while Sunstone was just a magazine for like, four-ish years, the first Sunstone Symposium was held at the University of Utah in 1979. So that's when Sunstone changed from just a magazine to at least an annual symposium. Tell us what that is, Bill.
This is Sunstone Volume 2, Number 2, the summer of 1977. And you can see Orson Scott Card is part of that, one of the articles in there, and is listed on the cover of the magazine.
Yeah, and he reminds me a lot of like early Jim Bennett, where, a thoughtful guy, but really, really believed that thought and faith could be integrated and that you could be thoughtful and believe. And he really, really was a champion for kind of that mindset. And eventually Orson Scott Card leaves Sunstone saying that it becomes too critical, too negative, and he ends up bailing later. But that's just a little bit of trivia. So yeah, Sunstone starts in 79, and it really starts picking up steam in the 80s. And I'll just say, to continue this kind of early timeline, the symposium and the magazine go in parallel. And then in 86, which is a year before I graduated from high school, Elbert Peck and a man named Daniel Rector take over from Peggy Fletcher Stack. She's had enough. She's wiped out. She wants someone to take over. And a man named Elbert Peck takes over with Daniel Rector. Here's my next trivia question. What frequent Mormonism Live, Radio Free Mormon fan, commenter, and contributor is related to Daniel Rector?
Bill?
I don't know.
Lila's brother, I think.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so Lila Tuller's dad is Hartman Rector Jr. And Lila has a brother who passed away named Daniel Rector, who, along with Elbert Peck, took over Sunstone Magazine in 1986. And they helped run Sunstone Magazine for quite a long time, including at least Elbert through the September 6th kind of a debacle. But that's kind of a little bit of a trivia. Our own Lila Tuller is sisters to one of the co-leaders of Sunstone for quite some time.
Interesting.
So I'll stop for a second. Any thoughts or questions so far?
This is great stuff. I love it. I love, there's so many connections. These periodicals, I mentioned that because I say dialogue too. Sunstone and Dialogue have been such a incredible space for the scholars of the past, especially prior to the internet, to get together and for people to share their scholarship, for folks to share a point of view, to share insights. And, now we live in an age of the internet, and Sunstone just keeps on rocking it.
Yeah. Now I've got a question. Usually a publication is going to appear if there's a void that the publication seeks to fill. So all I want to know is if you have any idea. You've already got Dialogue that's been out there for 9 years now, not even a full decade. And now 75 Sunstone starts appearing. What was Sunstone doing that Dialogue was not?
So Sunstone think of Sunstone as like a New Yorker magazine or an Atlantic Monthly magazine. I think Elbert Peck even mentions that was kind of the goal. Think pieces, not necessarily scholarship, although it has published scholarship and it has always advanced scholars at the Sunstone symposiums. But think of Sunstone magazine as think pieces where they would talk about cultural things and faith and historicity or cultural things or evolutions of the temple, but more written from a popular public intellectual perspective. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It does.
A lot of think pieces. It was all before the internet. So I'll be showing soon, Sunstone was the main communicator of really important Mormon news when the Salt Lake Tribune didn't want to cover something or didn't want to go as deep, or of course when the Deseret News didn't want to talk about anything at all. So I learned a lot of my really important Mormon news from Sunstone magazine. Sunstone magazine would always have cartoons, like with Cal Grundall. Think of was it Benson, Mark Benson? Who is the cartoon? The
Steve.
son of Esther Tapp Benson.
Yeah,
Steve Benson. Like, think of those types of political cartoons also that the New Yorker has. Sunstone always had comical cartoons. That would be a fantastic Radio Free Mormon or Mormonism Live episode, by the way. It's just showing old Cal Grundall cartoons that would have shown up in Sunstone magazine and other places. They had poetry. They had personal essays.
They're very funny.
What's that?
I remember those. They were very funny.
Yeah.
He was very talented. You just happened to be a Mormon.
Yeah, you could almost think of what the Mormon internet does today as being an extension of what Sunstone magazine used to do. Think pieces, scholarship, comedy, art, poetry, personal essays, all that stuff was in Sunstone, along with news.
For answering that.
What's that?
Thank you for answering that question. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I've got here in my office, I've got every issue of Sunstone magazine up until I stopped collecting them. So it's really fun and interesting to go back and read through these old issues. And I'll be talking more about that in just one second. But what I wanted to share next, I'm actually going to now share a clip of an interview I did. So when I started Mormon Stories, one of the first things I did before I started Mormon Stories, the very first thing I did in 2004 is I went to a Sunstone symposium and I met all the September 6th that I could find. And I ended up meeting Peggy and I met Elbert Peck. And this was after Elbert Peck had gone. Daniel Witherspoon was the editor of Sunstone at that point. But I interviewed Elbert Peck. Tell me what this is, Bill.
it's just an image of Sunstone. So folks who haven't been there, as you're describing going to Sunstone, they hold essentially 100 sessions every year of interesting topics that people submit. And this is what it looks like. And this is what John Dehlin would have been going to, is something that resembles this.
Yeah, and you'd walk through and you'd see there's Carolyn Pearson, there's Michael Quinn, there's Armin Moss, there's Greg Prince, there's Lavina Fielding Anderson, there's Martha Sontag Bradley. Like, you would just literally walk down the hall and see pillars. There's Bill Bradshaw, Bonner Ritchie. They would just all be walking down the halls, these brilliant Harvard, Stanford trained academics and professors and historians. They would just be, did you guys know that Hugh Nibley used to be not only a attendee of Sunstone Symposium, but he would also write for Sunstone Magazine? You could absolutely find Hugh Nibley articles published in Sunstone Magazine. Like, that's how Elbert Peck says that at the peak of Sunstone Magazine, something like 10,000 people were subscribing to Sunstone Magazine, and the symposium would have 5,000 people in attendance. We're talking about a lot. BYU professors used to be involved. LDS Church employees used to be involved, and they were all actively engaged in Sunstone.
Is it true at one point the BYU professors wore masks so as not to be identified?
I don't know, but I wouldn't. I know that there was a point where they would have had to keep their jobs. How about that?
Because the church came out with its declaration, don't go to Sunstone.
We're going to talk about that in just a second. But before we do that, let me just show you one clip from Elbert Peck. So this is the guy who succeeded Peggy Fletcher Stack. He presided over Sunstone during its most controversial years. And he talks about an exchange he and Daniel Rector had with one very important high-level leader of the church. And I just want you to imagine, Bill and RFM and viewers and listeners, imagine having this type of communication with the highest levels of the church as podcasters. And imagine what it would be like in 2025 if we as podcasters or YouTubers were able to actually communicate with church leaders. All right, so let me go ahead and just roll this clip and see if it blows your mind.
When he went to Boyd K. Packer?
No.
Boyd K. Packer was Scott's mission president.
Right. He told me that.
And when he was organizing Sunstone, he went and had a meeting with Boyd K. Packer.
Okay.
So,
what's the best? I mean,
yeah, I get Scott to tell you about that, or he actually is written about in the Sunstone history on his section, on his time. But so yes, and Peggy had talked to some general authorities. Peggy's related to general authorities. Her great grandfather was Heber J. Grant, and so when Daniel and I came to Sunstone, we wanted to be more faithful. We wanted to have everyone in the tent speaking. We got all these BYU professors coming, and we are getting more subscriptions from mainstream Mormons. And Gordon Hinckley was even increasing his comments about his passing comments about critics inside and outside the church. He would say, we don't need them. We don't listen to them. And Elder McConkie had given his talk about the caravan moves on and the yapping dogs who get left behind. And, so Daniel and I decided to go have a meeting with President Hinckley, who was a counselor at the time, and invite him to speak at a symposium. And primarily because of Daniel's dad being a general authority, we got this interview. This must have been in 1987 or 86, one of the two. And President Hinckley took us in his office and sat down, was warm and friendly and congenial. And I proposed the question to him, the invitation to him. He goes, No, I don't need to speak there. Thank you, but no, to the invitation. And so I came back again and said, well, you don't really speak in a lot of detail about your reservations about the critics inside and outside the church. Could you come and speak a little more in detail to these people so they could understand your reservations and everything? He says, no, I have all the forums to speak, and I say just what I want to say. And then he turned on us and says, well, I've got some questions for you. And he says, who called you to this? Who called you to this? Yes, a man must be called by authority in order to preach the gospel. Who called you to Red Sunstone? And we responded, man must not be called in all things. You can do a lot of things on your own independent free will and this sort of stuff. And he kind of nodded like that's a good response. And I can't remember the other questions, but there was on the spot, he would come up with these 3 or 4 rhetorical questions he'd put to us. And he put them in a genial way, like, these are just things I think you need to consider, And then I said, I really do think Sunstone can help the church. And I hit a button with that one. He goes, oh, I've heard that argument before. Peggy Fletcher used to tell me that Sunstone could really help the church. He says, and then he says, but like the time she was friends with Ken Woodward, that religion editor at Newsweek, and she showed him all around when he was doing his article on the MTC and the missionaries. We don't need help like that. And then he says, I know Peggy's Petra's family, and he recited her genealogy, and her grandfather's a senator, her uncle's a senator, her mother's a Bennett. No, not sure. Mother's not Bennett. Her mother's a Bennett. Her father's a Fletcher. And they're related to all these people. And grandfather's Heber Grant, and her uncle, her great uncle, was his missionary companion, Gordon Hinckley's missionary companion. And then after reciting her genealogy, which he knew intimately, which you get from all these old time families here in Utah. Everyone knows everyone who's connected in their lines. He says, considering who her family is, she should know better. She was, and so the thing ended, and Daniel, who was really kind of overcome with love for Gordon Hinckley, who I don't think President Hinckley, comes across genially in his speeches and stuff. I don't think he's a very demonstrative person in terms of his affections. Daniel went up to him and embraced him, and I watched as Hinckley kind of hesitantly embraced him back, and so I hugged him too, and and then as we left, I remember saying to Daniel as we're leaving the church administration building, he, at a minimum, he has to say, I don't agree with those guys, and I think they're wrong-headed in their approach, but their motives are good, and they're trying to do good, And Daniel said, that's probably what his final conclusion would be. Boy, were we wrong.
That's it. Any reactions to that story? And can you imagine having audience with the president of the church to even have the chance to invite him on, Mormonism Live or Radio Free Mormon? Like, that's the type of access even Sunstone had in the 80s. Isn't that wild?
I think they were seen as a force that needed to be reckoned with.
I was going to say something along the same lines, which is even then you listen to those comments that were made, and you can see the hesitation of like, let's not let these guys take the center stage. There was a lot of carefulness about thinking that those guys could do the church. Sunstone could do the church good. Anytime you have a bunch of people who are heralded for telling the truth in Mormonism, they will tend to find themselves somewhere other than the front row.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm going to skip to just show some of some formative or interesting Sunstone magazine articles that people might find interesting. So here's an issue from March to April 1982, and you can see that title, Does History Undermine Faith? Isn't that crazy that they're asking these questions all the way back in the 80s and earlier that they're still trying to figure out to this very day? And there are all these quotes in here that I pulled out that shows kind of the idealism of Sunstone, right? Bill and RFM, do you guys want to take turns reading some of these quotes?
Sure.
Go, Bill.
All right. Subservience to a particular religion is incompatible with honest inquiry, whether by historians or anyone else.
Going down.
These are quotes from Sunstone. Keep going, RFM.
The intellect deals more in questions than answers and helps us to be tolerant of diversity and discord, both important aspects of all human life.
Taking a one-sided approach to history undermines credibility of teachers with their students and diminishes respect for the doctrine of free agency.
Yeah, that must have been controversial. Because obviously they're talking about the church's approach, the one-sided approach to history. The next one is, why not face the problems early on, head on, and all out, like Roberts did, B.H. Roberts, I presume. Knowledge was his defense, and it was a noble and honest one.
The Spirit helps to establish ultimate values, moral unity, and diminishes the twin evils of secular man, narcissism, and normlessness.
Norm. Too soon. Narcissism and normlessness. I thought it was polygamy and slavery. The twin evils of secular man, narcissism and normlessness.
No values, right?
Okay, yes. That isn't exactly trippingly on the tongue. An effective way, this is the last one, number 6, an effective way for students to survive the shocks of learning the underside of Mormon history. Okay, the shock of learning the underside of Mormon history is to examine carefully the underside of secular history as well. Can you explain that one to me, somebody?
Oh, that's sort of like just this argument that secularism is more problematic than problematic religion. And so it's kind of this idea, the more you study, the more faith you have. If you study a little bit, you're going to lose your faith. But if you study a lot,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to actually increase your faith. Well, the only reason I'm sharing these quotes is just to show kind of how idealistic and faithful Sunstone was back in the day.
The amount of history that you have to study in order to get to the point where it supports your faith again after losing it is like Evel Knievel trying to jump the Snake River.
It's a little difficult, huh, RFM?
Yeah, he didn't quite make it.
You got to be at least 56 to be able to understand that reference.
You're saying you understood it?
Oh, yeah. I had an Evel Knievel doll and motorcycle when I was a kid.
Really? That's
Absolutely.
awesome. And it did jumps, I'll bet.
I mean, I made it.
Did he have a motorcycle?
Yeah, he had a motorcycle.
I would hope so.
Absolutely. But are y'all struck by those themes are still around, right? But there was a magazine talking about those themes in the early 80s.
Yes, and no wonder the church felt so threatened by it.
But those
This
are
is all the
faithful
stuff they're trying
quotes.
to keep on the down low.
But don't you see? You guys are saying those are threatening. Those quotes are saying we need faith, and there's a way to do history that can promote faith.
They're also indicating that we should not be hurt by telling the truth, and Mormonism deep down in places it doesn't want to talk about knows that isn't the case.
The truth is not Mormonism's friend.
No. So Sunstone's trying to split hairs there where we tell the truth. And of course, the one true church would love that, but that's not real.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
They don't like the truth, not even one little bit. Not in a box, not with a fox.
Absolutely. All right. A couple more fun, interesting Sunstone articles. The September 1982 Sunstone Review did a pre-bombing interview with Mark Hofmann. And interestingly, I can't get a copy of that interview, but Sunstone interviewed Mark Hofmann before the bombing. Isn't that kind of wild?
So you're saying you can't find this issue of Sunstone?
I have not been able to, no. They've got a web version of it where they discuss it, but the actual article I've not been able to find. And I haven't spent a ton of time trying.
Well, we have the next best thing to the Baker Street irregulars with our audience. So we can ask everybody out there, if you know somebody who has a copy of this issue or a copy of the interview, could you get a hold of John Dehlin at 801
mormonstories@gmail.com. But it's not a Sunstone magazine article.
Oh.
There was a Sunstone Review issue that was separate from the actual magazine. So at some point they were parallel releasing both the magazine and the Sunstone Review, I guess. So anyway, it's kind of obscure and rare. Maybe Benchmark Books, since I've been trying to hook them up, maybe Benchmark Books will hook me up and help me get at least I'll take a copy. I don't need an original. I'll just take a copy because that would be a good Mormonism Live episode, is reading the Mark Hofmann interview from
you
before
keep
the
giving us
bombing.
all these great ideas. Are you getting out of the podcast business or something, Jack?
we'll I scratch your back. Oh, there it is.
Keep the ideas coming. There it is. Is that yours?
Yeah, that's mine. How'd you find
your
it, Bill?
very one, and it would zoop up, and you could just zoom out of there and jump over things, right?
While you guys were chatting, I went through John Dehlin's toy box and I found it. There it is. The Evel
Knievel was a big deal back in the late 60s, early 70s. And especially when he jumped over, what was it, however many buses, 14 of them or something, or 11 at Caesars.
He was a big deal in the late 70s, early 80s, because I remember him.
Yeah. So at Caesars or something, and then that's where he missed it. There's, famous video of him, falling and breaking every freaking bone in his body at least once.
That's right.
That was Evel Knievel. Huge deal. Big showman. Great guy.
I love the references. And I love that Bill sits around and drums up old images of things to supplement the presentation. I love that, Bill.
It's a dangerous game. There was some kid who was a stunt. What do you call it? I'm so sorry. A daredevil. Like Evel Knievel jumping over buses. Was it in the past week or two? Died.
I don't know about. I didn't hear about
landing. That. It's dangerous.
It's all fun and games until somebody gets hurt.
Yeah, it's not like something you can. It's not something you can rehearse that much either.
As my son would say, when you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. So
The Darwin Award is what they call it.
Hmm.
All right, a couple other important Sunstone articles. They did, so Sunstone would have been where you would first learn about the Mark Hofmann scandal, along with the Tanners, right? But Sunstone released an issue that talked about it pretty early on, because again, they didn't have the internet back then, so you would read about it in the August 1985 Sunstone, and they interviewed, in this case, Lynn Jacobs. Read those quotes. Bill, can you guys see those quotes?
And do it in Lynn Jacobs' voice.
I don't know what Linda Jacobs' voice is, but let me remove.
Sort of like Truman Capote.
Okay, I don't know what Truman Capote sounds like, but let me at least do this. So these bottom quotes. First one: Mark's success seems more spectacular simply because he has very little competition. Who else is running all over the country, contacting antique dealers and document collectors?
So you guys
Indeed,
get that,
who else?
like, this is before the bombing, but after the salamander letters and that type of stuff. And it's basically Lynn Jacobs blowing sunshine up Mark Hofmann's rear, talking about how great of a documents finder he is. It's kind of ironic, right? It's kind of funny. RFM, you want to read the next one?
Didn't you do an interview with Lynn Jacobs?
I did.
He's passed away now, unfortunately, I believe, right?
Yes. Yes.
Are you ready to tell a story about what happened during your interview with him?
We should do a Mormonism live about that. Basically, he had a seizure. When I started asking him the really hard questions, he had a seizure and passed out.
Okay, now hang on a second, because this must be scanned. This would be scanned. So what do you mean the really hard questions? So you've got Lynn Jacobs. Lynn Jacobs was a companion, as I understand it, of Mark Hofmann, and he was in bed with him. He was in with him so deep that he was a suspect. That's correct, right?
Probably, yeah.
I think he was a suspect. I mean, he was cleared.
I think Netflix. I think it was Netflix that did that series, right?
Yeah.
I think they indicated either he said it on that documentary or it was said by someone else around him that he was a suspect and interviewed.
Murder
Let me
among the
correct.
Mormons.
I interviewed Shannon Flynn, not Lynn Jacobs. Shannon Flynn was another associate of Mark Hofmann's.
Oh, I'm
I
thinking of
interviewed.
Shannon Flynn then.
What's that?
I must be thinking of Shannon
Yeah,
Flynn.
I think so. I think you're thinking of
Lynn
Shannon.
Jacobs was the guy who'd go out with the Uzis and do the target practice
I
at the
think
gravel
so.
pit.
Yeah, I think
Shannon Flynn was the one that was questioned by police because he was in so close with Mark Hofmann. Yes. And so I have lots of questions for you, but they would all involve around conjecture about what you think was happening in those moments.
No, he doesn't have to conjecture at all. Oh no, I will ask the non-conjecture requesting questions.
Please.
What was it? Now now let's be clear. We're talking about Shannon
Flynn.
And this is Lynn Jacobs. That's why I get it goofed up. Let's get Lynn Jacobs off the screen if we can for a second.
All right, give me a
talking
second.
about Shannon Flynn, and Shannon Flynn was this close associate of Mark Hofmann, a suspect at one point, but then cleared. But there have always been lingering questions over how much he knew and when he knew it.
Yeah, that's
regarding what Mark was up to, especially with regards to the bombs. Okay. And there are a couple of facts, and I can't remember exactly what they are, that seem that have always been in tension. Things he said at different times early on that sort of didn't make a lot of sense. There's Shannon. And this is where he's being interviewed for that Netflix thing, Murder Among the Mormons. He did a great job. I think he was like, he stole the show. And then you got to be able to interview him afterward. And my understanding is, though I was not there, my understanding is that you ended up asking him very direct questions surrounding these statements of his that were in tension to try and find out what he knew and how he knew it. And then he had a seizure.
He had a seizure
right there in your studio,
and I've got it on film. Yeah, it's really sad.
So when he recovered, did he know who he was?
Yeah, eventually, but he basically couldn't continue the interview, and we had to cut it short.
Wow, that's amazing.
When the hard questions were happening, which really wouldn't be that hard. in other words, for him to, again, it could just be a coincidence. I accept that. It could just be a coincidence. But these questions aren't hard if you're emotionally detached. You have no involvement. You just have this relationship with Mark Hofmann, and one question's no different than the other.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought it was a strange thing that as you're asking him what his involvement is, that's when he has to step back from the interview.
No, I think he was stressed and embarrassed and ashamed. And maybe I'll pull out, now that he's passed away, maybe I'll pull out that video. RFM, you'll be happy to know.
I'm so excited we get to break the story behind the scenes that happened during your interview, where you may or may not have consulted with a once practicing attorney about some certain questions to ask in that interview along these lines. Is that true?
And yeah, I think so. And along that note, Bill, let me add my slide back really quick, because you'll notice an odd coincidence that the thumbnail that the Mormon Stories website is currently showing for the Remembering Mark Hofmann, Shannon Flynn episode. Guess whose thumbnail it's erroneously showing right now?
Does that have any meaning, or is that just a coincidence, or is the Book of Mormon really true?
It's yeah, exactly. Anyway, there it is.
What's your relationship with Mark Hofmann, Mr. Radio Free Mormon?
Oh, me?
I've
never met him.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure, but I've not met him. And then A Thoughtful Faith. I read that book. I think it was like toward the end of 1989, A Thoughtful Faith came out. Essays on Belief by Mormon Scholars.
Yeah.
And I needed this at this time.
This book was fundamental to my faith as well. I got it at BYU. And it was basically, Leonard Arrington, Philip Barlow, Richard Bushman, Mary Bradford, Richard Paul, Laurel Thatcher Ulrich, Francine Benyon, so many, Eugene England, so many brilliant, Harvard grads, scholars, PhDs, professors, just Emma Luthane, showing how thought and faith can be reconciled. And a lot of these people were participants at Sunstone as well. So Sunstone was very much a proponent of thoughtful faith, during the 70s and 80s. And even to this day, they still every year have a Why I Stay panel that Dan Witherspoon and others helped chair. But one of the saddest misperceptions about Sunstone is that it's negative, all about hating the church and destroying the church, when in reality, Sunstone has been carrying the banner of thoughtful, faithful Mormonism long before Faith Matters or Restore or Terrell Givens or any of those crowds. Sunstone was doing that and continues to do that.
So are you saying this A Thoughtful Faith book was published by Sunstone?
No. I'm saying that all I'm saying there is that book was influential to me, and that a lot of the people mentioned in this book were also either writers or participants in Sunstone magazine.
So it came out in 86. So it had been out for 3 years before I saw it.
Yeah. And I probably started seeing this around 1990.
Yeah,
a couple of other interesting Sunstone magazine articles. In 87, the son of Spence W. Kimball, Ed Kimball, publishes a big article about his dad. Imagine if the son of a modern day prophet was appearing on, Radio Free Mormon or Mormon Stories podcast. That's, the church was kind of different back then. You had more access to church leaders, and professors and church employees and even family of top church leaders were more willing to engage in the conversation. And I think that's significant. This is in 1988. There's go ahead.
I think of a contrast of what happened when you tried to do that news show with what's the name of the ginger?
Patrick Mason and Jenna Reeves.
Yeah, and then he pulled out because you were seen as too controversial for him to appear on the same platform.
Yeah, he wasn't even a BYU faculty. He wasn't even the family member of a church leader. And I still love Patrick, and I don't begrudge him at all. But yeah, it's just it's weird that we've gotten less able to have thoughtful interfaith dialogue within Mormonism now than 20 or 30, 40 years ago. It's kind of sad. And I don't know if it's because we've been too acerbic and too aggressive as YouTubers and podcasters, or whether just the church has dug its own grave by excommunicating and alienating and polarizing these topics. I'm not sure who to blame, honestly.
I blame Jacob Hansen.
Nice.
Thank you.
This is an article, Hugh Nibley, like a front page cover article by Hugh Nibley in Sunstone. That's 1988. Again, imagine if Hugh Nibley or top apologists were willing to engage with critics and with scholars and those asking questions. Instead, in 2025, they mostly operate only in silos, right?
It reminds me, John, early on in your time of Mormon stories, you interviewed John Lynch from Fair Mormon.
And Daniel Peterson.
Yeah. And those conversations, when you first started, those conversations with not Mason, but Givens and Bushman and Sam Brown, Brent Gardner, those guys were really willing to line up and take on tough questions, thinking like, oh, podcasts are these very far out things that only a few people maybe can listen to. And over time, I think that other folks came into the content creating sphere, and podcast became quite big. And I just think people started to bail inside the church, bail on the idea that having an open, honest conversation about church history was productive.
Yeah. Yeah, like I interviewed Grant Palmer and Richard Bushman. I interviewed Terrell Givens, and Brent Metcalf, Michael Quinn, and, Phil Barlow, right? And it is sad that the farther we've gotten away from the 1980s, frankly, the less willing, faithful, thoughtful Mormons are to have conversations with critics or with people who doubt or question or even stop believing. And I think we should do some thought about what's changed and why. Is it that the church started excommunicating us? Is it 2014 with Kate Kelly and with me in 2015 and then Jeremy Runnels? Like, do we blame the church's excommunication of social media people for the silo and the polarization of conversations? Because certainly Bushman and Givens wouldn't want to come on Mormon Stories after the excommunications, right?
But hang on, okay, because I'm not done with the ginger yet. Okay, and this is, I'm so sorry, he did Grounded or Planted, or what was his book?
Planted, yeah.
And what's his name?
Patrick Mason.
Thank you, Patrick Mason. The ginger. Patrick Mason, when he initially agreed to appear with you on a weekly basis, I believe it was, to do a newscast about things Mormon, at that point, he knew that you were excommunicated, didn't he?
Yes. Yeah. And Patrick has come on Mormon Stories since and done, 8 hours worth of interviews. So, right prior to that. So Patrick's been willing to engage with me, even though the news program didn't work out.
Somebody who had some kind of influence over him changed his mind for him. It wasn't like that he found out that you were excommunicated or that somewhere along the way you got
No. I'm guessing he had important donors basically tell him and or threaten him that he could lose funding and support if he cooperated too closely with the likes of us or me.
Not to go off into a different tangent, but you mentioned Daniel Peterson being interviewed on Mormon Stories, but it wasn't you that had that interview.
It was right? Dan Witherspoon did. Yeah.
That's where he got him on the record about the water dousing.
Yes. Was it about the reason that Dan interviewed him was because he wouldn't let you interview him, or what was the story there that why Dan?
I think Dan Witherspoon just had a relationship with Dan Peterson. But I will say this, Dan Peterson and Fair turned against me. They loved it when I interviewed Richard Bushman. They hated it when I interviewed Grant Palmer.
Why?
And once I interviewed
Grant Palmer was negative about the church.
Once I interviewed Grant Palmer, I was persona non grata with the Fair people.
So you can only interview people who will say nice things about the church to stay in their good graces.
Well, I just think, it's weird. In 2025, nobody remembers an insider's view of Mormon origins. But in 2005, in the early 2000s, that was a devastating, significant book. Mm-hmm. And Grant Palmer was viewed certainly as more of an enemy of the church than I ever have been viewed. Like, he was viewed as Satan. And so it really was bold and controversial of me to interview Grant Palmer on the same podcast that I interviewed Richard Bushman. And
You mean the same titled podcast, Mormon Stories?
yeah,
Not on the same episode.
same channel. And the Fair never forgave me for that.
That doesn't sound fair.
Mm-mm.
Although, and the only other thing I'll say is, I guess political discourse has become more polarized these days. So maybe the polarization of Mormon religious discourse is also just a byproduct of broader general polarization in our American society. I don't know. But it isn't, Mormon studies isn't the only place where conversations have become siloed and polarized. Fair?
Those taboo topics of religion and politics.
And
Yeah.
sex, my mom said.
And sex. Couple other really important stories I'll share. Sunstone was where you would learn about the George P. Lee scandal. Bill or RFM, do either of you want to summarize the George P. Lee scandal, or should I?
I think you should.
Well, so the way I remember it is George P. Lee was a general authority, probably chosen by Spencer W. Kimball as the one, quote, laymanite general authority. He was the go-to guy for, all things laymanite, buddies to Spencer. And at some point, Spencer W. Kimball started backing away and de-emphasizing the emphasis on the Lamanites, probably because it's cringy and racist and cultural imperialism and appropriation, and the Lamanite placement program had all sorts of, stories of abuse and scandal. Regardless, at some point, as the church starts backing away from its emphasis on the Lamanites, George P. Lee gets in trouble. And on the one hand, what Sunstone publishes, and Bill, if you don't mind going back to my slide for just a second, then you can show yours, because yours is also significant. What Sunstone published was 2 letters that George P. Lee wrote to the general authorities of the church. So imagine a general authority gets excommunicated, and then somehow a modern YouTube channel or Mormon themed podcast is publishing correspondence between the excommunicated general authority and the top church leaders. Well, that's hard to imagine now. That's what happened with Sunstone. So George P. Lee ends up excommunicated. Sunstone publishes 2 of George P. Lee's letters. And I just want to read you, Bill. RFM, you've already heard this. Bill, I want to read this to you and to the audience, and I just want to hear if anybody thinks this is interesting. So this is George P. Lee writing to the First Presidency in the Quorum of the 12. I speak unto you, not just for myself, but for all the Lamanites, the Jews, and the lost 10 tribes. Like my father Nephi of old, I pray continually for my people, and mine eyes have watered my pillow by night because of them. And I'll cry unto my heavenly Father in faith, and I know that he will hear my cry. Any thoughts on George P. Lee literally writing those words in, 1989?
He might believe more than those many wrote to.
Yeah, what do you mean by that, Bill?
I just mean the way he's writing seems sincere, and it seems like he's really trying to implore, a term we used in Mormonism. He seems like he's really trying to implore the brethren to do something different and to recognize his sincerity.
And isn't it interesting? He refers to himself as a Jew. He's writing on behalf of Jews.
Yes. I'm not sure why his father is Nephi, except he wants to quote him. I would have thought Laman or Lemuel, but what do I know?
That's interesting, RFM. I didn't even notice that. Of course, RFM also brings out fascinating things. Anyway, one other problem with George P. Lee, and Bill, you can go ahead and show that clip now.
Yeah.
Is, speaking out against the brethren wasn't his only offense.
So
Okay.
this is an image of Lee when he was speaking from the pulpit in a general conference. He was every church top leader's favorite Lamanite at the time. And then we go to George P. Lee, his mugshot photo. John, why is George P. Lee disheveled in a mugshot photo?
So rumor is that he, or allegations are that he was involved in some sort of child sexual abuse. I can't prove that. That's just my understanding. So,
Do you know what happened? He was
No, do
charged.
you?
Was he convicted?
I don't know, and that'd be a great episode as well, but I don't know.
I don't recall either, but my understanding is that any evidence was planted by the SCMC. Planted.
well, the only other thing I'll say is if he didn't run afoul of the church, I'm 100% sure he'd still be a general authority. And even if he had been a child abuser, the church wouldn't have cared as long as it wasn't broadly known. The only reason I believe the church cared that he was a child abuser is because he was speaking out against the brethren.
So Jeff,
Because they'd be as likely to cover that up as they would excommunicate the offender, in my opinion.
Wikipedia, which I think is quite a trustworthy source, in 1993, the Salt Lake Tribune reported that Lee had attempted to sexually molest a minor girl in 1989, and that this was one of the reasons for Lee's excommunication. Initially, Lee denied the charges. However, on October 12th, 1994, the Tribune reported a year ago, former Mormon General Authority George P. Lee proclaimed he was innocent before God of sexually molesting a 12-year-old neighbor girl, but Tuesday, before 3rd District Judge, Lee humbly hung his head and admitted to touching the girl's breast for sexual gratification. Lee, 51, pleaded guilty to attempted sexual abuse of a child, a 3rd-degree felony. I'll just say we no longer need to say allegation. He himself pleaded guilty to it.
Well, yeah, he said he was innocent, but he said guilty to take the deal to get it down to attempted.
Yeah. I guarantee there's been other general authorities who it has been discovered that they abused a child and no fuss was made because it would have been embarrassing to the church. So it was just ignored and covered up. I guarantee that's true.
By the way, Bill, yes, you're correct. Once he pleads guilty, regardless, yeah, you don't have to say alleged anymore, but guilty of attempted.
And I'll just say, too, in a contested trial of he said, she said, where you're innocent, in such a case where there isn't, assuming you're innocent, there isn't any hard evidence that you did such a thing. Most people in the legal system, when there isn't any hard evidence and it's just he said, she said, don't get convicted, if I'm not mistaken.
You could be mistaken.
Okay.
However, we also don't know that there wasn't any corroborating evidence.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but that's assuming, I'm assuming he's innocent.
There could be corroborating evidence and he be innocent.
Yeah. Okay.
It happens, baby.
So Kolob Choir Queen says, wow, John, that's a serious allegation. I'm speculating. I'm not alleging that it's true. I'm just saying that based on how I understand the brethren operate, I would suspect that what I just said is true, but I don't know for a fact that it's true.
Yeah, you don't want to get Warb Kolob Queen mad at you, Bill.
And that is what, John, what is it that they're pointing to? What was it you
just that I said that I'm guessing that part of the problem was that George P. Lee was speaking out against the brethren, and you know, and I'm sure his ouster might have been tied to the abuse, but I think it was also tied to him speaking out against the church and being angry that they effectively scuttled the Lamanite program. But I'm saying I'd be willing to bet money that other general authorities have been guilty of abuse, and because they didn't speak out against the church, or because it wasn't widely known, the church was likely willing to cover those types of things up. I believe that's how the church seems to have shown how it operates, in my opinion.
Yeah, they've covered up other types of things. So sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, my recollection about D. Michael Quinn and his excommunication is that I think we understand at this point that the reason he was excommunicated was for the publication of his article about post-manifesto polygamy, right?
Correct. Yeah.
But then later on, it turns out that he's homosexual. So history gets rewritten by some to say that the church excommunicated him because of that.
Yeah.
Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, or even allegations at the time were that he was excommunicated because he was gay.
Well, the church is very happy to have people they want to excommunicate have some kind of sexual indiscretion in their eyes so that they can hang the excommunication on that instead of the real reason.
Yeah.
Well, like you, John, you got excommunicated for a fake reason.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Can you tell the audience what I mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I was called into the bishop, what he cited was my support for same-sex marriage, my TED Talk supporting same-sex marriage, my support of ordained women and female ordination, and my podcast. And even when I was deliberating with my stake president, I was told the way that I could avoid excommunication would be to take Mormon Stories completely down. But when the church gave reasons publicly, sometimes through the apologists, as to why I was excommunicated, it was because in some episode of Mormon Stories, I said something about the atonement or God, and I expressed questions or doubts or even disbelief about an Orthodox tenet around God or Jesus. But that was manufactured. Yeah.
Yes, it was. Show me the man, I'll show you the crime. What's next?
All right. So a couple other, important articles. The 1990 temple ceremony was referenced in the April temple ceremony changes, where they took out a lot of the blood oaths and the throat slitting and the disemboweling. Sunstone mentions that in 1990. Again, this is before the internet really takes off or even is known. Later, the temple ceremony changes are discussed. This was some of the stuff that really got the brethren upset. I heard a rumor that Ezra Benson cried when he heard that Mormons were discussing changes to the temple ceremony. And I'm sure there's a lot of troubling things. What's that?
He would cry at anything that Ezra tapped Benson.
Well, I was going to say, I'm sure there's a lot of things he should have cried about that he didn't. But the one thing that caused him to cry about was Mormons discussing changes in the temple ceremony. So
the other time he cried, when all the general authorities cried together, do you know when that was? When the priesthood ban was lifted.
Priesthood ban was lifted in 78.
Because they can't tell the story about it without saying how much they cried.
Yeah, right. They were just so happy.
Yeah, they were very happy. That's why they cried.
And then this article in RFM, I think you even did a show about this recently. This article came out while I'm at BYU. Obviously Lynn Packer was the main reporter. But the Sunstone article on the Paul Dunn scandal, exposing General Authority Paul H. Dunn as someone telling lies about being a Major League Baseball player and a World War II hero, when in reality he was lying and he was selling tapes and books off of these lies. And he was the most popular general authority in the church at the time. Again, it was Sunstone Magazine that covered this and helped break this story.
Because Arizona Republic, was it Arizona Republic that reported on it first?
Yeah. Yep. But Sunstone helped is kind of all I'm saying. Really quickly, it was around this time where the brethren started really making it known that they were upset with Sunstone. And the first shot across the bow was Dehlin H. Oakes's a talk entitled Alternate Voices. Now, RFM, we're at an hour 10. Tell me how we're doing on time and how much more.
Great. I think we're doing great. I mean, he looks like Guido up here. I forgot that he looks so, threatening and intimidating.
Yeah, this is kind of wild. And his voice is different when he's younger.
He should be petting a white Persian cat on his lap, I think.
Is that a James Bond reference?
A little Eric Blofeld reference, yes.
How many more minutes are we going to go, just so that I can manage the time?
Blofeld. No, just keep going. You're fine.
Okay. All
You're
right.
fine. If you take up 20 more minutes, we'll kill you. No, 20 minutes should be fine.
Okay. So this is the alternate. In 1989, Dehlin H. Oakes gives the Alternate Voices talk, which was this was just a couple years after, this account of Elbert Peck trying to talk to Gordon B. Hinckley. Just a couple years after that, when all the Sunstone stuff is really heating up and the dialogue stuff is really heating up. So let's hear what number 2 man in charge of the Mormon Church today said back in 89 about, quote, alternate voices.
Last summer, at a pioneer parade in Wyoming, I saw a young colt separated from its mother.
A
The
cult?
lost youngster whinnied and trotted about, listening to a chorus of voices as it sought the voice that would guide it back to the side of the one it loved. At other times, I've seen lambs lost in a moving herd of sheep. A great chorus of voices rises from the herd, but each lamb listens for the one voice that can guide it. The Savior used this ageless example in the allegory of the Good Shepherd. The sheep hear his voice, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. And a stranger will they not follow, for they know not the voice of strangers. From the chorus of voices we hear in mortality, we must recognize the voice of the Good Shepherd, who calls us to follow him toward our heavenly home. As Paul said to the Corinthians, there are so many kinds of voices in the world, and none of them is without signification. Some voices speak of the things of the world, providing the useful information we need to make our way in mortality. I will make no further reference to these voices. My remarks will refer to those voices that speak of God, of his commandments, and of the doctrines, ordinances, and practices of his church. Some of those who speak on these subjects have been called and given divine authority to do so. Others, whom I choose to call alternate voices, speak on these subjects without calling or authority. In the 5 years since I was called as a general authority, I've seen many instances where church leaders and members have been troubled by things said by these alternate voices. I am convinced that some are confused about the church's relationship to the alternate voices. As a result, members can be misled in their personal choices, and the work of the Lord can suffer. Some alternate voices are those of well-motivated men and women who are merely trying to serve their brothers and sisters and further the cause of Zion. Their efforts fit within the Lord's teaching that his servants should not have to be commanded in all things, but should be anxiously engaged in a good cause and do many things of their own free will and bring to pass much righteousness. Other alternate voices are pursuing selfish personal interests, such as property, pride, prominence, or power. Other voices are the bleatings of lost souls who cannot hear the voice of the shepherd and trot about trying to find their way without his guidance. Some of these voices call out guidance for others, the lost leading the lost. Some alternate voices are of those whose avowed or secret object is to deceive and devour the flock. The Good Shepherd warned, "Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves." In both the Bible and the Book of Mormon, the Savior charged his shepherds to watch over and protect the flock from such wolves. There have always been alternate voices whose purpose or effect is to deceive.
All right, I think that gives us a good sense of that talk. But
Yeah.
he basically not only is framing critics or even just earnest scholars, right, as wolves who want to eat the sheep and tear their throats out. You know what I mean? But he's also sort of positioning himself and others like Boyd K. Packer as like watchmen on the tower who are guarding the flock of sheep. And it's funny that they're using a sheep metaphor for believing members of the church.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also kind of disturbing that he's talking about Sunstone when I just showed you it's like Hugh Nibley, it's Eugene England, it's Elbert Peck, it's Peggy Fletcher Stack. It's these people who are faithful, who are simply, I mean, for the most part, just trying to help talk about church issues, reconcile thought with faith, promote more advanced faith and devotion. Certainly, and occasionally report on a troubling news story. And that's the type of talk that behavior warranted. Any thoughts or comments on Elder Oaks' alternate voices talk, Bill or RFM?
Just again to say that I don't know what his perception of what dialogue was going to be in the beginning, but he was on the founding board of dialogue. He was at that moment one of those alternate voices.
Yeah, but the operative word there is was because he got off.
Yeah.
No, I think that Elder Oaks made it clear that he was never on the editorial board of Dialogue during the time that he was on the editorial board of Dialogue.
Yeah, he denies it. There was no shenanigans then. That wouldn't be the first time.
He's got this incredible presence. I mean, I'm getting a Hannibal Lecter vibe from him. Were you guys getting that? He's talking about the sheep and the lambs. I expect him to start talking to Clarice.
Clarice.
Put the lotion in the bucket.
I think I got that, but disturbing. The whole thing's disturbing.
Yeah. Well, that was 1989. And then, apparently Sunstone and Dialogue and everyone else didn't back down adequately, because in 1991, the church issued a statement on symposia. And of course, Sunstone magazine covered the statement of symposia.
Of course.
And this was in August 23rd, 1991. So literally, I don't know, 30, what is that? 34 years ago? Is that how long it was?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it in relation to the Sunstone conference? Was it right before?
That would have been maybe right after a Sunstone symposium.
When they
2 weeks after. 2 weeks after Sunstone Symposium, August 23rd, 1991, this statement was released.
Okay.
And we'll just read, I don't know, Bill, do you want to read a little bit, like starting the second paragraph?
Yeah. I can put it up on the screen. I think it's.
Sorry. I've got it up.
I've got the actual letter.
There we go.
Wow. Look at that.
All right. So
looks very official.
Yeah.
October 1991.
It's signed by the First Presidency and the Quorum of the 12. And Bill, maybe start with the second paragraph and I'll tell you when to stop.
And just for a note, this was also in the end. So it wasn't just a First Presidency letter sent out. It was also in Ensign Magazine, November of 91.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it says the Council of the First Presidency and the Quorum of the 12 Apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has issued the following statement to members of the church. Recent symposia, sponsored and attended by some members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, have included some presentations relating to the house of the Lord, the holy temples, that are offensive. We deplore the bad taste and insensitivity of these public discussions on things we hold sacred. We are especially saddened at the participation of our own members, especially those who hold church or other positions that give them stature among Latter-day Saints and who have allowed their stature to be used to promote such presentations.
So they're talking about the discussion that was going on about the changes made in the temple in April of 1990. That's what they're referring to.
Yeah, there's certainly been out of shape about that.
Okay.
Yep.
We have a different concern about some of the other topics at the symposia. Some of the presentations by persons whom we believe to be faithful members of the church have included matters that were seized upon and publicized in such a way as to injure the church or its members or to jeopardize the effectiveness or safety of our missionaries. We appreciate what?
So really quickly, I think one of the main people it's talking about there is David Knowlton. So David Knowlton was a professor at BYU. I believe he's a sociologist. And he wrote an article about Mormon missionaries in Latin America. And it made the church feel like his article was putting the Mormon missionaries in Latin America in jeopardy or jeopardizing
Talk about how high the recruitment rates were in the CIA or something. There was a connection with the CIA, right?
That sounds right. That CIA recruited a lot of Mormon missionaries. And so then if the CIA was working in Latin America, the Mormon, and this was common. When I was in Guatemala, some people would see me as a Mormon missionary and say, are you in La CIA, in the CIA? Because there is an association in Latin America between Mormon missionaries and CIA operatives.
And you do dress in a tie, you dress like you're a government man, a G-man.
Yeah, and so the church was certainly worried about David Knowlton's articles in Sunstone. And he was a professor at BYU while I was there.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's some of the other stuff. I don't know if you want to read this whole...
University of Texas when I was there, John.
What's that?
He was a student at the University of Texas
cool.
when I was there.
Did you know him?
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. You knew David Knowlton.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. He's still alive.
I'm glad. I'm heartened to hear it.
Just FYI, it's still up on the church's website. So churchofjesuschrist.org. You can just go to the November 1991 ensign. Guess they still called it that back then.
Yeah.
I wondered if maybe they changed the name everywhere, just so now it's harder for everyone to find all the things.
I think I came up with the reason that they changed the name to Liahona. You know why? Because everybody knows what?
Ensign Peak.
Oh, that's a good point. I was thinking because everybody knows how to pronounce Liahona.
No. I think this change came after the whole being caught with the dummy companies and the Nielsen thing coming out.
Maybe.
I think they did not want people looking up Ensign anymore.
I think that's a good point.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll take that off, put yours back up on.
So that paragraph was probably about David Knowlton, my friend. We appreciate the search for knowledge and the discussion of gospel subjects. However, we believe that Latter-day Saints who are committed to the mission of their church and the well-being of their fellow members will strive to be sensitive to those matters that are more appropriate for private conferring and correction than for public debate. You want to take it from here, Bill? So in other words, you can talk about this privately or not at all.
Jesus taught that when a person has trespassed against us, we should go and tell them his fault between thee and him alone. And if he will neglect to hear this private communication, we should tell it unto the church. Then they provide the scripture for that in Matthew, and it continues to say, modern revelation tells us that this last step shall be done in a meeting, and that not before the world. DNC 4289. There are times when public discussion of sacred or personal matters is inappropriate.
They're basically saying, don't criticize us publicly, is what they're saying.
It's wrong to criticize leaders of the church, even if the criticism is true.
Nice. Very nice. Beautiful.
Okay, I think I finally got it because I was really wondering about this. This is all put as one big block, one paragraph. So it's supposed to be on the same idea or theme. And yet I think they shifted somewhere in the middle and they came down on a strange dismount. But there are times when public discussion of sacred or personal matters is inappropriate. They're talking about anything that you think that we've done that's wrong, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the leader's saying to the members,
yeah,
anything that you think we've done that's wrong, got to be private, got to be secret.
Yeah. And I'll read the last paragraph just for the sake of time. Some of our faithful members have doubtless participated in these symposia because they were invited to state or defend the church's position on a particular topic. Hugh Nibley, right? There are times when it is better. This is a key sentence. There are times when it is better to have the church without representation. Patrick Mason, on a, a podcast about Mormon news. There are times when it is better to have the church without representation than to have implications of church participation used to promote a program that contains some, though admittedly not all, presentations that result in ridiculing sacred things or injuring the Church of Jesus Christ, detracting from its mission or jeopardizing the well-being of its members. And again, no shade on Patrick. I love him. I don't fault him. I'm more referring to the culture that the church has fostered, which is don't talk to your critics, don't talk to people like Sam Young with actual, credible, legitimate concerns. Instead, demonize them, excommunicate them, treat them as lepers, and don't even be associated with them, which is kind of anti-Christian, don't you think? Like, wasn't Jesus's point to hang out with the lepers and the scribes and the Pharisees and the publicans and the lady at the well?
Yes, but once you figure out that Mormons are anti-Christ, what does that make anti-Mormons?
Pro-Christ.
And I'll just note what was the one group of people that Christ actually did criticize and put in their place, and it was the leaders of his true and living church.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just say this, that in response to the statement on symposia, do you guys think it's interesting they never actually named Sunstone? They just spoke about nebulous symposia as if we all don't know who the church is talking about.
So-called intellectuals.
Well, of course, there are some people who don't know who the church is talking about, and that's why they're not saying the name of it.
It's the same reason that apologists won't name any of us directly.
Right. Because they are so scared. They are so scared of what it is we have to say, just like the church was so scared of what Sunstone was talking about, that they didn't want to even name it, lest the members take the information and use it to their
But is it scared
detriment.
or smart? Because they don't want to fall prey to the Streisand effect,
No,
where
that's not
you
smart.
denounce something and you're basically marketing for it, right?
I don't think it's smart, and here's why. Because anybody who wants to find out can find out, number one, and number two, it makes you look like you're chicken.
Yeah.
Fair.
That's the way I see it, but I don't see it the way necessarily, everybody else sees it.
No, it's possible. I think we're speculating, but it's fun to talk about. I'll say, so 89 was the alternate voices. 91 was the statement on symposia. In 92, Sunstone shares an article by Bonner Ritchie, who I also interviewed on Mormon Stories, who tries to say, Sunstone, reel it in. There needs to be limits on dissent. We need to manage our capital and be careful about the criticisms we make and the way that we talk. Definitely probably referencing Paul Toscano at this point and others like the loud, angry feminists, as some would have described them at the time. And then a really big problematic thing was in July of 1993 when Paul Toscano announces the Mormon Alliance, which is like an ACLU, but related to Mormons. But also Lavina Fielding Anderson in a dialogue article listing specific instances of ecclesiastical abuse, naming the names of leaders, who had been abusive. That was a big problem. And of course, Maxine Hanks releasing her book about feminism and all the scholars who supported her, starting to advocate for priesthood. All of it got too much. And then in September of 1993, we all know that the church decided that Sunstone wasn't listening. And so it excommunicated or disfellowshipped 6 strong participants in Sunstone Symposium and Sunstone Magazine. And I was at BYU in November of 93. I remember these excommunications. I attended a press conference that the September 6 held in response to the churches excommunicating them. And I was still a believer at the time. And I was like, man, these people suck because they're critics of the church, but it also sucks that the church is excommunicating and silencing them. So I just left BYU kind of sad and afraid and dejected because Sunstone had meant a lot to me by this point. And basically these excommunications left a chill on Mormon discourse for another, 10 to 20 years. And it wasn't until 2004, 2005 that, you could start to see in the late 90s, early 2000s with Signature Book publishing books by Simon Southerton, like Losing a Lost Tribe, or Grant Palmer's An Insider's View of Mormon Origins, or Michael Quinn's The Origins and Extensions of Power. Signature Book starts really heating up in the late 90s and early 2000s. That influences me when I'm working at Microsoft. That's when I read Von Brody, finally, have my crisis of faith. I leave Microsoft in 2004 because I realized the internet's coming along and it's going to be a big problem, and it's only going to amplify critics and history and doubts and faith crises. So the Bloggernacle comes on the scene in 2004. Mormon Stories comes on the scene in 2005. And it isn't until 2013 that the excommunications resume. Pop quiz. Who is the first excommunicated person of the last, 10 to 15 years on the Mormon internet?
Are you talking about September of 2013? Is that question?
This would have been September of 2013.
Okay, because I got it right actually before.
Tell who was excommunicated in September 2013.
My prophet and yours, Denver Snuffer.
That's right. And that's the first sort of internet age excommunication that I was paying attention to. Let's put it that way. Not counting gay Mormons that were getting excommunicated all the way through, right? But Denver Snuffer was 2013, Kate Kelly was 2014, I was 2015, and then of course Jeremy Runnels, Carson and Marisa Calderwood, eventually you, Bill Reel, Natasha Helfer, Sam Young, kind of this 10-year wave of internet excommunications that kind of happened 20-ish years after the Sunstone September 6th excommunications happened. So anyway, I'm okay. I'll just summarize by saying some of the roles that Sunstone has played within Mormonism: art, comedy, news, a liaison to the media. So whether it's Dan Witherspoon or Peggy or Elbert or Lindsay Anson Park, news media often contact the leaders of Sunstone to get sources for news media stories. They've been supporters of history and scholarship, thoughtful, balanced discussions of faith, building community, supporting dissent, and even supporting activism. Those have been all roles that Sunstone has played. And I would say the Mormon internet today stands on the shoulders of Sunstone and Dialogue and Leonard Arrington, who are all standing on the shoulders of Sandra and Gerald Tanner and Fawn Brody and even B.H. Roberts. And so it's kind of a rich heritage that we all have, and Sunstone plays a critical role. And some of the things that Sunstone taught me, Mormons can laugh. I didn't know that. Sunstone taught me that I wasn't alone in my questions and doubts and concerns. Way back in the early 90s, Sunstone taught me that the LDS Church can be harmful to some people, that the church leadership can be abusive, that there are super cool Mormons and ex-Mormons that we should learn, that excommunication is a barbaric and medieval practice, that we cannot and will not be silenced again. Because when I purchased my microphone and started Mormon Stories in 2005, I knew that the likely outcome was that I would be excommunicated like the September 6th. But the one thing I said is, to the church's chagrin, is that unlike the September 6th, I will not be silenced. And I will create a culture that celebrates excommunications, that makes it a sacrament. And I will try to help lead a new wave of thinkers or scholars or activists that will only get stronger as a result of excommunications, as opposed to getting more silent and weaker in response to excommunications. And it was Sunstone that taught me that we will not be silenced by excommunications and intimidation. And the final thing I learned from Sunstone that I have on this list is that we can organize and speak up and even affect change within the church. And in fact, dissent and public criticism is probably the only way that the Mormon Church has ever changed, along with government federal action in the case of polygamy. But even then, it took 20 or 30 years. So that's my John Dehlin's personal review of Sunstone, and Sunstone continues to this day. Lindsay Anson Park has done a phenomenal job keeping Sunstone alive. The Sunstone Symposium is still fantastic. I'm even told that Stephen Carter is still issuing an annual edition of Sunstone magazine, which I didn't realize until this very last Sunstone that I attended. So love you, Sunstone. Support you, Sunstone. Everybody support Sunstone. Enjoy Sunstone. It's a rich legacy upon whose shoulders we all stand.
How do we support? I'm sorry. I thought you were that. How
in the name of
support
Sunstone, amen.
Oh, that was what you said. How do we support Sunstone if there's not a monthly magazine to subscribe to? If there's only a yearly symposium, obviously we get the one a year. Go to the symposium, but are there any other ways? Yeah,
I think it's just a nonprofit. You could donate to it. I remember a couple years ago, this Jeff Green guy, billionaire, ex-Mormon, I think he donated six-figure sums to Sunstone. So if George Smith, who is the founder of Signature Books and the Smith Pennant Foundation, for many, many, many years, even decades, George Smith, I believe, provided half the budget of Sunstone Foundation every year. So you can absolutely donate annually, monthly, weekly, one time. You can support Sunstone in all those ways.
Thank you for answering that question. I think we already have some people who are ready to join us in the studio. Is that right, Bill, with questions for John Dehlin?
Yeah, we've got Tim Rathbone.
Tim Rathbone from Bakersfield, California.
Hello.
How are you, Tim?
I'm doing great. Happy birthday, John.
Thanks, Tim.
My birthday's Friday.
So the 22nd.
Oh, cool. Are you a Leo too?
I'm a Leo Virgo. I'm on the cusp.
Oh, okay.
71.
That's awesome.
Hey, Shannon Flynn was the guy that did the Uzis and the bombs. Not
Was
Lynn.
Shannon Flynn the one who did the Uzis and the bombs? And Lynn Jacobs was doing what?
Lynn was the one who was Mark's front. When I was doing research on David Patton, Lynn called me because he told me that Mark had a elder's license signed by Patton and Marsh that he wanted to sell me. So Lynn was the front for Mark.
Okay.
And that elder's license ended up in the church archives, and I got a copy of it for free later on. But that's another story. And I was there when David Knowlton, I was there in August of 91. I'd always go to Sunstone for my birthday for a number of years. And I was there when David got up and said, I could be in trouble for saying this because of that symposium statement.
Do you remember what the statement was that he made?
It was the one that you read. He says, because he was teaching at BYU at the time. And he says, I can get in trouble for being here and even talking here. Okay.
And I was at BYU when David Knowlton, Cecilia Farr, and Gail Houston were all fired and in BYU terms denied continuing status for praying to Mother Heaven, advocating for feminism, and for, in David Knowlton's case, publishing in Sunstone. By the way, one of David Knowlton's most famous Sunstone articles showed phallic symbols in Mormon architecture, a history of phallic symbols in Mormon architecture. And it depicted the church headquarters as one large, one large penis with the two globes at the base of church headquarters as the testicles and the large tower of church headquarters as the shaft. Is that the word? Of the penis. What's that?
You know something, David Knowlton, he was quite a hoot. That's why he used to refer to Utah as the swing state. He actually did that. True story.
David gave a presentation on the missionaries that were, I think, killed in South America.
Yeah.
At the time, that was the paper he gave, if I remember right. And then we had lunch, me and him and Jay Bell, and I can't remember who else had lunch across the street someplace. We talked about stuff. But I went to Sunstone for years. Gene England was my bishop at BYU for a while, right after I got married. And
what was it like? What was it like? What was Gene England like?
Gene was an idealist. His heart was in the right place, but I don't think he knew how to do some things or present some things properly. I don't know how to explain this.
Do you have an example?
He was an idealist, right?
He was an idealist. Well, I'd go in and talk to him about history and stuff, and the problems I was running into. And he would give me some high answer like have faith and Just keep unplugging, do this stuff. Same thing Mike Quinn would say. Mike would say, well, you got to, how do I deal with, Mike, how do you deal with this? He says, well, I separate. I think Mike was a high counselor at the time on his stake. And Mike said, I separate it out. I don't mix my church with my history stuff. So you need to learn to segregate it, somehow segregate it out, and don't let it bother you. It's what basically is what they both said to me. And I couldn't do that. I just, that was really difficult for me because I kept running into so many things that were contrary to what I had learned and what I knew. It was really difficult. I mean, I was going to the archive. I was working in the BYU archives, and I was going to church archives 1 or 2 days a week, going through diaries and letters and stuff, plowing through hundreds, thousands of documents, getting information. And Gene was a good man. Like I said, he meant well. But when the rubber hits the road, he really didn't know how to push forward, I guess, is the way I'm trying to explain it.
There's no good way, there's no healthy way to be an activist in the church.
No.
You're going to end up in trouble, even if are the kindest, gentlest. The church doesn't want, you heard it in that Elbert interview. President Hinckley says to Elbert, who called you to this? In other words, you don't have authority.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what good you want to do. You don't have authority. So stand down. And
the crazy thing is not only did Oakes repeat that same sentiment in his general conference talk that you played, right?
Yep.
But they are actually echoing what the Pharisees said to Jesus. Or is it John the Baptist? It's John the Baptist, I think. Matthew 3. By what authority do you do these things? That's the bad guy's line.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. I have good memories of Sunstone. I gave a couple of papers there and an MHA also. Sunstone started in 74. It wasn't 70. First issue came out in 74. What you're looking for, John, for the Hofmann interview is what was called Sunstone Review. It was printed on newsprint.
Oh, it was like a newspaper.
Newspaper, yeah. That's where I first encountered it when I was going to Institute. When I lived in Colorado Springs, I was going to Institute. My Institute director had them, and he showed them to me to read. And I was going, oh, this is interesting. Here's somebody interested in the intellectual side of Mormonism. So that's what you want to find. You want to find a Sunstone Review because that's where that interview is.
Yeah. Well, if anybody can help us even find a PDF of it, I think that would be really fun.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm surprised Sunstone doesn't have those on their website because they have every issue on there.
Yeah.
The magazine anyway.
Yeah. They have an article that talks about it, but they don't have, the actual article, at least that I can find.
I remember being at Grandpa's Books with Art DeHoyos and myself, and Mark brought some banknotes he wanted to show to Ernest Strack was a polygamist, and he had Grandpa's Books, and Grandpa's Books was at the foot of BYU campus, and right above was Seventh East Press had their office, and Kinko's was right next door, all in one building. And he brought these banknotes to show to us, look at this, look at what I got, these Deseret banknotes and stuff. Turns out they were forgeries, but he was trying to sell them to anybody that would listen to him. There were about 5 or 6 of us there that day. Mark just shows up, and he'd show up in the archives. When I worked in the archives, he'd come in the archives to talk to David Whitaker about stuff he had found or ideas.
Wow. I tell you, it's not apparently John the Baptist, but it is in Mark 11. So let me just go ahead and mention this, okay? Because I think it's important. It's Jesus, not John the Baptist. And they came again to Jerusalem. They come again. And as he was walking in the temple, that's Jesus, there come to him the chief priests and the scribes and the elders, boo, hiss, and say unto him, by what authority doest thou these things? And who gave thee this authority to do these things? And Jesus answered and said unto them, I will also ask of you one question and answer me, and I will tell you by what authority I do these things. And that's when he asked the question about John the Baptist. The baptism of John, was it from heaven or of men? Answer me. And they couldn't answer him one way or another because they get caught either way. So that is a famous and New Testament attested use of this strategy, saying, well, what authority do you have? You don't have any authority to do this. In the New Testament, it's the bad guys who ask that to Jesus.
Yes.
Well, Tim.
And I can also attest to Leonard Arrington's portrait being in the church archives. I saw it, and I remember when they took it down. It was about 83 or 84. They took it down. Anyway. So
Yeah, right after he was, yeah.
Right after
You
he
know
was
lots of
released.
things, Tim. And I appreciate your being here. I think we got a few more
Oh, you're
people
welcome.
though, who have to say happy birthday to John Dehlin before
All
we
right.
go off the air
Thanks,
tonight.
Thank
Tim.
you, guys.
Thank
Take
you,
I
care.
will
Tim.
leave you. I
You're
will leave you to
welcome.
the mercies of Bakersfield.
It was only 100 here today.
Oh my goodness, you're getting off
Something.
easy.
Right.
Happy birthday to you in a couple days, Tim. We'll see
Thank
you on
you.
Mormonism After Dark, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Right on.
All right, see you later. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
This one, you're talking about phallic symbols. This is the chandelier that often gets the play. What about this one, though? Have you seen this one before? This is
That can't be real.
that's not a real one. That last one was just me being creative.
You made that?
Yeah, I strung those lights together 2 weeks ago. I knew this episode was coming and we'd be having this conversation. So
You're an amazing person. Very talented.
yeah, I got it on Etsy if anybody wants one.
Do we have anybody else in the green room, Bill?
No, that's why you kicked
What?
Tim, saying
What
that
happened to Colby?
Kobe was down there, but he's not down there anymore. So Kobe, come on.
You killed
We'd love
Colby.
to hear from you. So I'll put that link in the chat one more time. But folks,
just because it's worth showing just for fun. If we're seeing if anybody else wants to join.
sorry.
Here's a side photo of that church headquarters building. And you can't see the globe on the far side down below, but there's basically two globes on the far sides and then the tall tower. And that's just a side shot of what David Knowlton. I mean, I guess there's no wonder he was punished, right? I don't know. Is that blatant? Is that intentional? Is that unintentional? Is that subconscious?
I think that tells us more about David than it does about the church.
It does.
David,
Like an ink blot thing, and he still sees it anyway.
can you say penis envy? I knew you could. Hello,
Thank
Colby.
you. Hello. Thank you for bringing me on with a no context penis envy mention, RFM.
You are welcome, sir.
Yeah.
Hey,
When you play
Colby.
it back, it'll make more sense. But we weren't talking about you. God knows that.
Okay. Perfect. I was real worried there for a second. Happy birthday, John Dehlin. Thanks for the presentation.
Thanks, Colby. You're a great friend and a great thinker. I'm happy to see you on the show.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, they keep me around here from time to time. Bring me out of my cage.
He's 56.
Thanks, Bill. Co-lobby. That's right. I didn't really have a question. I really just wanted to, I saw people in the live chat saying, get the rando in here. So speak of the rando and he shall appear. But John, I just wanted to thank you for all you do for the folks in this space and for this presentation, especially on your birthday. I think you're a good person, and I just am really thankful for you. Thankful for your friendship. Thankful for all three of your friendship, actually. So that's really all I wanted to join and say.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Colby.
That's very nice. I'm glad somebody said it so I don't have to, John. Colby, you beat me to it. Thank you.
You're welcome. You guys
Thanks,
have a good night.
Colby. Thanks for your friendship and all you do.
What a nice young man that Colby Reddish is.
Absolutely.
Something I just want to say here. I'll put this picture back up. I lived in Ohio, right? I wasn't out here in Utah. I didn't even know about Sunstone early on. It was quite a ways into my time that I'm like, what is this Sunstone thing? And for everybody who lives away from the Wasatch Front, who doesn't live anywhere near Utah, has never been to a Sunstone, you're doing your post-Mormonism, you're doubting Mormonism, your progressive Mormonism, nuanced Mormonism somewhere else in the country or outside of it, you ought to make a trip and at least be at Sunstone once. I think you will be quite impressed, because what I'm looking at here is 5% of everybody that's there, 10% of everybody that's there. There are tons of rooms. They've all got people in various sessions. There's people out in the hallways that have created art or different things. Benchmark Books takes up part of the center room that you can sort of see off there to the right, and they're selling all of their books there. And as you pointed out, John, my first year there, I'm seeing people like you and Lindsay Hansen Park, all the Mormon celebrities, and it was really impressive and meaningful to me to go to Sunstone that first time and to see everybody. In fact, I think that's Wayne Hepworth there in the far right middle of the pack there. But anyway, it's a great time, and I think everybody who's never been to Sunstone should at least do it once.
Yeah. Some call it Mormon Comic-Con.
It is.
Is that fair?
It is.
Oh, look at that.
Ganesh, appearing in
Hello,
the
how's it going? Well, I don't get much of a chance to be on Mormonism Live because, of course, I'm usually in New Zealand, so it's the wrong time of day. But
plus we banned you.
That's right. And so, but seeing as I'm in Utah, and I saw John yesterday, of course, but happy birthday, John, for today. And I know how agonized you were over your Sunstone presentation about the years of Sunstone, and being able to see you so relaxed tonight, presenting much of the same information is a real treat. This was my third time going to Sunstone, and I went, like 2 years ago. Oh, that's a book. Thanks. And I loved it so much. I came back last year and did a presentation, and then I came back again this year and was able to present on my book, which was fabulous. It's really exciting to be able to share ideas that you have, and even more exciting to hear other people's ideas. Because I live so far away and don't get to usually attend any of those kinds of things, Sunstone has been a real community of just exciting information, but also a lot of great community.
Do we lose him?
Well, there goes Ganesh.
Oh, while Ganesh is coming back, I'm just showing Ganesh's new book. We just did a Mormon Stories episode about it. The book is called Joseph Smith, the Architect of Mormonism, a Topical Biography by Ganesh Cherian. Have y'all had Ganesh on to talk about his book on
Yes.
Radio Free
Yes,
Mormon?
I might
Mormonism?
add. We had an interview with him about his book as well.
No, that's
I'm not
awesome.
saying whose was better.
I'm sure yours was way better.
I'm not saying that either. But Ganesh, where the heck is Ganesh? Ganesh just pulled a lemming on us, I think.
What I would say is purchase Ganesh's book, and that way help him. It might be an internet quality issue. Maybe Ganesh could use the sales of the book to help the internet bill at the house. And so folks buy the book. It's on Amazon. I'm going to put the link in the live chat. I don't mean that as an insult. I'm trying to make a joke.
Translated.
Get people to
There he is.
the book.
Direct to you from the Celestial Kingdom. It's Ganesh.
Sorry, there you go.
Ganesh.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. The internet connection where I am is not so wonderful.
Well, you look marvelous.
You're always so complimentary, RFM. It's a treat to be with you.
I don't mean a word of it. But while you were gone, John was hawking your book like hell wasn't having any.
Well, I've been incredibly grateful for the reception, and it's been a lot of fun promoting the book, talking to people, hearing their experience with it, and also being able to share it, particularly with other scholars who I've engaged in the process. Because of course I'm just this hick, from New Zealand, and I've had to utilize a number of favors with people across the world, and it's been nice to get together with them and show them the finished product, and for them to be excited about it, and proud that I've represented their views well. So I'm just really grateful for that.
Well, you're the life of the party wherever you go. Now, do you remember, Ganesh, being on Mormonism Live and doing
Yes.
a show about your book?
You
You remember that?
Absolutely. I've been on there just 6 weeks ago, I think it was.
Yes. And do you remember doing an interview on your book with Mormon Stories and John Dehlin?
The one that I did just yesterday. Yes. Yep.
You did one with John Dehlin?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yesterday.
while you were gone and we were talking without you here, John was asking, he was wondering which of those two interviews you thought was best. Mormon Stories or Mormonism Live?
Gosh, they're both so fun. Oh God, you're asking me to choose between you? Is that what you're saying?
Some of these questions that there is no answer to.
Yes.
Those they'll be the ones we avoid. I gave talk.
Perfect. Well done, Bill. Well done. No, you don't have to do that. Obviously, we all know who you like best.
Well, it's the person who gives me the best hugs, RFM.
I would decide on number of views is how I would make the decision. Ganesh.
Really? Oh my gosh, you're so
I'm telling
mercenary,
you.
Bill. I like that about you.
I'm going to say, how about numbers of books sold?
You go.
Well,
Okay.
hopefully in a couple of weeks I'll be able to tell you who's given me the biggest spike in my book sales.
What is that word on your shirt?
Oh, parkrun. I don't know if you had that in the States. I'm pretty sure you do. It's a weekly 5K run on Saturday morning at 8 a.m. all over the world. And
You've got this big thing hanging around your neck. It looks like
Oh,
a
sorry,
big
sorry.
piece of wood. So it's park
Yeah,
run.
this
It's
is-
all one word. No, I'm not
That's
familiar with that word. But I see the park and the run. So how
So
long
it's
is the park run?
It's 5Ks.
Okay, and you do that every week?
Yeah, I try and do it every week. Yeah, yep. It's and you can you get a barcode and you can use it anywhere in the world, and so it records your run, and they time it and they send you your timings, and you can just keep a tally on how well you're doing and whether you're improving.
What's your
People
best
walk
time
it,
on the
people
5K?
run it. It's about 28 minutes, so just under half an hour.
Well, I'm very impressed. You know, you're in very good shape for a man of your age.
Well, I seem to be a lot, because of my white hair. I seem to have aged more than most people my age.
So how old are you really? 39?
I'm 52.
52. Yes, absolutely. Still, I mean, not a lot of 52-year-olds are 5K'ing around every week.
RFM, did you know that Ganesh is a Kiwi Kenny Rogers? Did you know he's known as Kiwi Kenny Rogers?
No, I did not know that.
True? Is that true, Ganesh?
Is that true?
It's true. It's my go-to karaoke song, and
Who you
everybody
look
should have
like.
one.
Because you look like him. You just dropped in to see what condition my condition was in.
That's right.
So
I know
you
when
want
to
to
hold
see a
him.
little bit of Kenny Rogers, like the gambler or something?
That's
He's
right.
just got the facial hair, the white hair,
Oh, that's it. He looks like it. It's
the
a
white
visual
beard.
gag.
He's Kiwi Kenny Rogers.
Yeah, you look great, man.
You're very kind. You're very kind, and it's always a treat to be with you guys. And I can hear my my internet connection cracking up, so I'll let you go. But it's good to have you, and gosh, it was a great presentation tonight. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Ganesh.
Ganesh, see you later. Bye-bye. Isn't that incredible technology? We can have him on here from the other side of the world. That's just amazing. And all here in honor of you, John, and your birthday.
This will be our last person. So Tyson, how are you doing?
Hey, my beloved brethren, it's good to see you again. Thank you so much for having me on.
Hi, Tyson. This is John Dehlin. John Dehlin, Tyson, John Dehlin.
Yeah, I've talked to Bill and RFM before, but John, I want to first wish you a very happy birthday.
Thank you, Tyson.
Fellow Leos unite. My birthday was a week or so ago, so and John, you were my gateway drug into the, again, quote unquote, anti-Mormon field, and I thank you genuinely, sincerely. And then I went down the rabbit hole, and Bill and RFM. So yeah, I really want to thank you for being such a seeker of truth and empathic listener, and allowing others to tell their stories. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Are you saying that people start with Mormon stories, but they end with Mormonism Live? And
No, I do both. I do it all now, but you were my first.
You're the entry drug, and Bill and I, we're the good shit.
I bounce around between all of you, and so I appreciate it. Now, Bill and RFM know that I've introduced my talents of being a golem impersonator.
Yes. He's really good, John.
Gone.
Yes. So we can do two options. John, you bringing up that talk, I already forgot the name, Alternate Voices?
Yes.
Between Oaks. Have you seen this? This is a more recent picture of President Dehlin H. Oaks. I don't know if you can see that okay.
I've seen that, yeah.
He hasn't aged well.
Not very well. We can do, I would love to do Gollum again. I could sing Happy Birthday to John in Gollum voice, or read some very problematic quotes from this talk that you introduced me to.
Really kind of, what do you want, John? It's your birthday, damn it. You get to choose.
Yeah, I want to hear you do Gollum as Dehlin H. Oaks.
Got it.
Reading Dehlin H. Oaks quotes.
Here's a few. So,
some alternate voices are those of so-called scholars who are seeking to use the instruments of scholarship to establish their own views in place of the doctrine of the church. Some alternate voices are feminist voices that demand equal authority for women, contrary to the Lord's plan. Some alternate voices are those of self-appointed historians who seem to value authenticity more than doctrine.
I think I'll call it there. That's what my voice is, my throat is saying.
People who started applauding, in the middle of an orchestra piece when you're not supposed to applaud.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a Ricola on your behalf.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
The Ricola of power.
Show.
Thank you, guys. Love you. Love all three of you
so much.
That's awesome.
You're the best. And what a great impression as a gift to John Dehlin.
That's your birthday present.
Thank you. That was brilliant. Thanks, Tyson. Y'all have a lot of fun here. I love it.
We do. We have a lot of fun. And I'm glad that you could be a part of it for one night in your life. And that it's your birthday. It's a birthday you will never forget, John Dehlin.
How can I forget tonight?
No, it's unforgettable. That's what this is.
Well, I hope I gave y'all something that you were hoping to get. And I hope viewers and listeners learned a little bit of some of the history and timeline, because do y'all agree we stand on the shoulders of giants?
It's because other people spoke up that I had a space to start speaking up. I couldn't have done that without folks like you and those who came before you, John.
Yeah. And for me, it was the Dialogue Sunstone crowd that inspired and influenced me, along with a lot of cool BYU professors. I always tell RFM would have heard me say this, that thank you, Aaron Shook. RFM would have heard me say this, that I think you could just pick a random Dialogue or Sunstone article, or a thoughtfully selected one, and have endless material for Mormonism Live episodes, because there's just so many great articles written that we've just completely forgotten about. RFM reminded me that when I did the Shannon Caldwell Montez interviews about B.H. Roberts and the secret Mormon meetings of 1922, I did a little digging and found out that so much of what Shannon was sharing, which I thought was brand new, had already been heavily discussed in dialogue in the 80s and 90s. And there's so much more that we just have forgotten about. So I encourage people to buy or obtain back issues of Sunstone, back issues of Dialogue. There's great content there.
Yeah, someone once said scholarship is the practice of digging up bones from one place and burying them in another. So a lot of stuff is out there. It's amazing. There's stuff that isn't out there. Some stuff is, and it's just waiting to be dug up. And there is treasure that actually can be found on these treasure digs.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, John, for coming on tonight. I very
That
much
was
appreciate it.
It was so nice of you, especially on your birthday and everything.
Yeah.
You're the
My
best.
pleasure. Well, y'all do great work. I love you guys. I'm proud to be associated with you, and I'm honored you'd have me on the show.
Wow. Thank you very much. Well, thank
Keep
you
up the
again,
good
John
work.
Dehlin. Thanks for all your good work. Go forward and prosper.
You too, Bill. You too, RFM.
And
Love
then
you guys.
I'll lead us out after John leaves. Okay, Bill?
Yep. Take it
Bye,
easy, John.
everyone.
See you, John.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Get out of here.
All right. Kick me
Why is
out.
he still here? But they don't go. Okay, anyway, everybody, that was great. I had a lot of fun. Thanks for everybody who watched. Thanks for everybody who was in the live chat. Thanks for everybody who zoomed in to be part of the discussion. Encourage all of you to do that more in the future. It's a lot of fun. And let's see. So it's Wednesday night. It's the 20th of August. And Friday night, it's going to be Mormonism After Dark at 8 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time. And that may be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, actually. It usually is. And we are going to have a lot more people calling in than last week. Last week, we had a lot of talking going on, but a lot of good information last week, behind the scenes information from Randy Bell, so that you can be up to speed on that. And then Friday is going to be much more led by the audience members. So then we come around to what? Saturday. Oh my gosh, Saturday is going to be another Radio Free Mormon. I have been working very hard at the studio on coming up with slides about the paper that David P. Wright wrote, and that was published in 1993, that led to his excommunication the following year. I did the episode about his excommunication and everything he went through in his own words, and that's been well received. And then I had asked in that if anybody wanted me to go through the paper that got him excommunicated, because I didn't go into detail on that. Well, the response of that request was overwhelming, so that's what I'm doing. And I'll be going into the paper and what the paper talks about, and David P. Wright wrote about and researched, and he's the one who saw it and gets the credit, is the relationship between Alma 12 and 13 especially, and the book of Hebrews in the New Testament. We're all very familiar with talking about Sermon on the Mount in the third Nephi, right? And the 1 Corinthians 13, hope, faith, hope, and charity, showing up in Moroni 7, I think it is. And then the gift of the list of the gift of the spirits from 1 Corinthians 12 showing up in Moroni 10. But the connections with Hebrews is at least as important and significant as those, and yet it doesn't get as much play. And very importantly, as David P. Wright points out, it's not just I'm pointing out the connections. That would be almost meaningless. But the important part of his paper, and which we'll go into a bit, and is fascinating, is that seeing how it is that Joseph Smith uses Hebrews in the Book of Mormon helps us understand the process that he used in order to receive revelation or expand upon things, because he does certain things with these. He doesn't necessarily just copy him straight over. There's a lot of that with Isaiah, but here this is looser. It's still clearly from Hebrews, but he's working the material in order to make it mean something that is more beneficial to what he's trying to do, what Joseph Smith is trying to do. He is likening the scripture unto himself, like Nephi says, right? That's what Joseph Smith is doing. So it's really exciting. That should be up on Saturday night. And then the newscast on Monday at 6. And we'll see if we're reporting the demise of any church presidents then, because I've got some intelligence coming through that someone may be on their last legs.
Ooh. We'll have
Maybe
to
the last few days.
We'll have to see. And I'll just say the episode you've got going out Saturday, I mean, you've been doing this for the last few years. You've been on a roll where you've been showing scholarship, things you've found, also things that others have posted that haven't been very widely read about the internal structure of the Book of Mormon, and evidence that points to Joseph Smith as its author. And maybe the last 2-3 years, you've put out 10 or 12, 15 episodes that have tackled that sort of thing. I'll just want to note too, folks, please please subscribe, and the donation link, if you go to mormonismlive.org and click the donate button, I'm putting that link in the chat right now. But this podcast really does survive on donations, and we really do need your support. And we're not able to do this unless that support continues and that others come on and are able to donate. So folks, because people come in, they deconstruct, they hang out for a few years, and then they step away. And so we need the next generation of folks who watch this content to be supportive, and those who do donate or have in the past, thank you so much. But that link is up on the screen right now. We really do need donations right now, and would really appreciate it if any of you would go there and donate $5 or $10 a month. Anything helps to keep our work going, and we'll just continue to bring current events and history and cool analysis about Mormonism and a few laughs on Friday. As you guys support the program, we'll keep putting out content.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for all of you who donate and support in any way possible. Thanks for watching, everybody. We appreciate your viewership at Mormonism Live, and we love coming to you 1, 2, 3 times a week, sometimes more, but it's always a fun and never a bore. Good night, everybody.
Mormonism Live. Better than touching your own little factory.